Call 1-888-FARMERS to switch, and you could save an average of $470 on your auto insurance. That's a lot of money in just a few minutes. With savings like that, you could be lounging on an impractical amount of ornate and overpriced throw pillows you bought for your couch. But you won't, because you're better with money than that. That's why you're calling us in the first place. Call 1-888-FARMERS to get a quote today.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Based on average nationwide annual savings survey data July to December 2020. Underwritten by Farmers Truck or Fire Insurance Exchanges or affiliate. Products not available in every state.
Here's 3 great reasons to get the new Samsung Galaxy S21 5G at T-Mobile. 1, it's free for both current and new customers when you trade in an eligible device. 2, T-Mobile's the leader in 5G coverage. So 3, you can unleash 5G speeds in more places with your new phone. Get the new Galaxy S21 free at T-Mobile, the leader in 5G coverage.
Phone via 24 monthly bill credits plus tax. If you cancel credit, stop, and balance on required finance agreement may be due. Contact us. Qualifying credit and consumer plan required. See details at T-Mobile.com.
Welcome to the Behind the Bits podcast. Your host, Scott Curtis, wants to learn everything he can about stand-up comedy and take you along for the ride. Scott and his guests talk serious about comedy in every episode. Behind the Bits will uncover knowledge from different perspectives on subjects such as writing and performing stand-up comedy, as well as booking shows and the comedy life. If you're thinking about becoming a stand-up comic, already in the comic game, or a comedy nerd, Behind the Bits is the show for you. Now, let's get Behind the Bits.
Hey, BTB buddies, I found another great podcast for you. It's called Stand By for Places. Take old-time radio shows and replace the Jack Benny Show with some of the greatest plays of all time, and you get Stand By for Places. The team at Stand By for Places doesn't just get regular people like me to read these plays. They have professional actors and directors perform the play like it would be performed on stage. You can tell that everyone involved really cares about the production of every play performed for Stand By for Places. I've listened to A Christmas Carol, and I'm getting ready to cue up The Importance of Being Earnest. I think of Stand By for Places as not so much a podcast, but more like Broadway for your earbuds. I'm a podcast aficionado, and I can say I've never heard anything with the production value of Stand By for Places. Check this out if you've never been able to see great plays by playwrights like Oscar Wilde, or if you'd like to revisit them while doing your yoga session. Stand By for Places is a great podcast to help you embrace the beauty of creativity and can be found on all the podcast apps. You know what I'm going to say here? It's a good one. My guest tonight is an attorney and a comedian. He is a regular at Laugh Factories and Zanies across the country, and was named as one of the 40 best stand-up comedians by Stand Up Seats. As if that wasn't enough, he's also the host of Singles Only and Mixtape Podcast. Folks, it's Paul Farahvar.
Hey, guys.
Over there. How you doing, Paul?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
So first of all, where are you from?
I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, a suburb called Oak Brook, Illinois.
Okay.
But I've been in Chicago most of my life.
Okay, great. And let's talk about the first time you did stand-up. When was the first time you did stand-up?
So the first time I did stand-up officially was at an open mic, a venue called Merkel's. It was an open mic. They had a contest, and that was about, I believe, April will be 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So I did the contest, and then they asked me to come back and host it. So I took it over and made it into one of the longest running. It was a great open mic called 2.5 Persians at Merkel's in Chicago. Ran for a while. It was a contest. We had real crowds, so it was pretty fun.
That's something to say for an open mic.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's fun. Like we had guest hosts, or I'm sorry, guest judges, and the judges were always like attractive men and women that we knew who had a lot of followers. So then their friends would come,
right? And
then eventually the hosts or the judges ended up being bookers at comedy clubs. So a lot of comedians were doing like their best stuff at this open mic. So it's kind of funny where instead of people trying to write stuff or try new stuff, they'd end up doing their best stuff to try to get booked at, Comedy Bar or Zanies or Laugh Factory. So it was kind of fun.
Right. That's neat because you were using influencers before the name influencers came out.
Yeah, we were at the time. Me and my other host, Chris Bader, we were pretty smart about that. We were like, because if someone, we gave them free alcohol or free food,
right,
as judges, and then it was an easy sell because they got to see 25 comedians do 3 minutes or 4 minutes, and comedians forget sometimes. For us, open mics are work, but for other people, it's sometimes it's interesting.
Yeah,
especially if it's a hot room.
Yeah, so. And it's different. I've done plenty of open mics where it's just me and the other comics, and I've done some where there's real audiences too, and it's a totally different vibe. And you don't want to try your new stuff when it's a nice audience.
Well, you should still try it. They say the
I know.
But, obviously, when you have a hot crowd, you're like, man, it's hard not to prove like, hey, I'm funny.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to bring out the hits, and I've done both and fallen on my face a few times both ways. So whatever. So who were your influences as far as comedians? Who did you like growing up?
Well, growing up, I really loved Eddie Murphy and Chris Rock. I didn't think I'd ever go into comedy. I just liked them a lot. My older brother got me into Eddie Murphy, and I actually found like old cassette tapes of Andrew Dice Clay. So apparently I had a Dice stage as well. But I was really young. I liked Robin Williams as well. But those are the comedians that I grew up watching. I grew up watching Eddie Murphy. I memorized all of his stuff, and same with Chris Rock. And then when I started doing comedy, or right before I did comedy, I got more into I would say like Gary Gulman and Jim Gaffigan early on. So those are like some of the comics I liked as well.
Right. Cool. Now, you are the second attorney comedian I've talked to. So obviously the attorney thing probably came first.
Yeah. So I don't as of this year, I'm not practicing anymore. I still had a law firm up until March. But I still have a law degree, and I still have a license to practice. I just don't do it anymore.
So you're headlong into the comedy.
Yeah. Right before COVID, I closed my office, and because I was booked up solid for shows, and then I had a job as a writer on another show, and so I was like, I can't really be responsible for clients. I felt I wouldn't be there and I get in trouble. So I closed my office, and then COVID hit, decimated my whole schedule and some of my opportunities. But I started opening up again, and now we're just back at trying to figure out what's going on.
Right. So, it does feel a lot like starting over.
Yeah, it's a lot harder. In Florida, I was doing some shows. I was getting some momentum and getting a regular run of shows, and then it's hard for me, especially because I write on stage, and it's harder for me to write, to all these new bits and the Zoom stuff. Zoom shows are fun too, but it's just not the same.
Right.
After you've done real shows for like a couple weeks.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, I just did probably the first fun Zoom show I've done this weekend in a while. I've done Zoom shows. I can't say they're all fun, but there was actually an audience, just like the open mics. So this question takes us off pace a little bit, but I always like to ask people if they're reading anything, listening to anything, just anything, podcast, magazine, anything that's giving you some inspiration. Do you have anything like that going on?
So I read a lot. I read a lot of biographies and autobiographies. The Tom Dreesen book you have behind you, I read that last month. I had Tom on my show, Stuck with Paul. He's a good friend of mine, and I like reading books like that. I'm reading I Want My MTV right now, the MTV era. Tom Papa's book. I read Judy Gold's book a couple weeks ago. And then I just bought Jerry Seinfeld's new book.
With all the bits?
Yeah, I didn't know that's what it was. I thought it was like, oh, wow, he's going to tell about himself. But
yeah. No, he never does that.
Yeah, so those are the kind of things I like to read. Those I'm reading. I like to read biographies or not autobiographies of people, whether it's comedy or anything. I get inspiration from that because I like to hear people's journeys, whatever it is that they've done. I've always been involved in reading biographies. So
great. I'm glad you mentioned Tom because he was actually my first guest, and he's like my idol. I used to watch him on Mike Douglas and Dinah Shore and Carson, and he was like the first comic I ever really paid attention to when I was like 9 or 10 years old. And so all through the years, he's been my guy. And, you know, I like Letterman and all that too, but he's always been the one that I say that is my inspiration for comedy. And we had a conversation before I had him on the show, and I'm telling him a joke that he said on Mike Douglas, and I totally got it wrong. And he said, no, it goes like this. And he says, I haven't said this joke for 30 years, but this is how it goes. And so we did that, and then he agreed to be on the show. And I actually did a special show for him for the launch of his book, too. So that was fun.
Yeah, I got to open for him quite a bit. When I first got past the Laugh Factories in Chicago, and they had a Scottsdale location in Arizona, and I got to do some shows with him. He gave such great advice. He's so funny off stage too.
Yeah,
people don't realize how he's such a clean comic.
Yes,
and off stage he's not, and it's fun to you're like, holy, you see this guy who's like your a father figure to you, and he's saying these things. But he always gave me great advice, and I saw him the first time I did a comedy show where he got standing ovation, where I saw the comedians get standing ovations at the end. I've seen since, but that was the first time I saw it on a consistent basis.
I got to see him do the Sinatra show right before COVID hit, so that was a neat show. It's funny you talk about how he is off stage. The show I was doing with him was a live show, and I brought a bunch of surprise guests into the room, and I didn't want to completely surprise him, so I brought them in before we went live, and he went on this rant and said all the words. I'm not going to say what he said because I don't want to attribute it to him. And I was just like, I wish I was recording this, not to tell anybody, but just for me, so I could play it back.
It's funny because that a lot of those I've gotten to work with a lot of clean comedians, and it's so fun to just. I mean, it's always fun to hang out with these people that you look up to, and just be in the same room with them in a personal setting. But just some of the stuff you hear some of these comedians off stage say, you're like, wow, like I can't believe so and so is it's fun. And I've gotten the one great thing about doing comedy is just you get to do shows with, or even podcast or whatever, with all these people you look up to. It's so it's hard to not, as a fan of comedy, it's really hard to not fan out sometimes.
Right. And it's really great how Tom is great with everybody he talks to. He's great. Yeah. Anybody that will talk to him and will listen, he'll take time for him. He's a cool guy.
So cool. And the book is great too. Highly recommend it.
It is. I've read through it twice now. Yeah. That's why I've got it here by me all the time. I'm actually reading Rob Halford's autobiography, Confess. And that's one of the things from my teenage years I can't get rid of, being a Judas Priest fan. And it's actually pretty good. I mean, he had actually a pretty good childhood, but he really had a family that they were just pretty much working poor, and the stuff that he went through is interesting, and the stuff he went through with the band is too. So it's a pretty cool autobiography.
Yeah, I'll have to check it out. I wasn't a huge Judas Priest fan. We had a guest on our Make Us a Mixtape podcast who was a big Judas fan, and I tried to listen to it again, but I tend to listen to softer stuff.
Yeah. Well, you had to have listened to it when you were like 16, or I don't think somebody that's an adult can go back and listen to that catalog, and it has to be kind of a nostalgia thing for you.
Well, yeah, we talk, Marty DeRosa and I have a podcast, Make Us a Mixtape, where we talk about how whatever you listen to in high school kind of like influences your music forever.
Yeah.
Oh, unless you like outgrow it. Like if you were, a big stoner and you stop smoking pot, Grateful Dead's not going to make as much sense to you.
Right.
Or whatever. But
I think the only band that I outgrew from my teenage years was the Doors. I had a Jim Morrison poster right by my Debbie Harry poster, and I just love the Doors. I listen to them all the time, and now if the Doors come on, I just turn it off. It's just I can't even listen. We
have a thing for that on the Mixtape podcast where there's certain songs where you just hit your limit. It's like, okay, I can't. Whatever the number is, like 1,037.
Yeah.
It's like you've heard Morrison Hotel, the last. It's like that's it.
Yep.
And I feel the same way about a lot of Led Zeppelin and certain bands. I just can't, like Pearl Jam. I can't listen to that anymore.
Yeah. Now, have you ever done a Led Zeppelin bit though, saying that they're overrated and you don't like them?
No, but I did talk about them on the podcast, and we got a lot of hate mail.
I was going to say I've tried a bit because I'm one of those too that I think they're.
I like them. I can't listen to them.
Yeah, anymore. I think they're okay. I think they were a good band and they did some good stuff, but they're totally overrated in my book. And then I tried to do a few jokes that way, and I'm going to get hate mail now, but I tried to do some jokes that way, and I tried to soften them, and I got booed every single time. It just doesn't work.
It's hard to pull something like that's just kind of one of those things. There's certain bits where you do them enough time where you know when it's coming, where you're going to say something that's going to anger people.
Yeah.
And you have to just fight through it.
Yeah.
I mean, I do it now where I know when I do it in certain areas, it's going to get people pissed off. But you just got to lean into it.
Yeah.
You got to do it later in the set once you've already established.
Yeah.
it.
Well, I'm just putting that in my list of stuff to do that I know pisses people off. And when I'm in a place where I know I'm not going to win, I'll just go through all that material and make them hate me even more.
That's good too.
A reaction is a reaction. If it's visceral and they throw shit at you, it's still good.
It's still good. That means they take the time to buy something to throw it at you.
Yeah. What album or special would you consider to be your all-time favorite? And I let people do 3 since it's hard to pin down one.
I think that, Eddie Murphy Raw was probably one of my favorites growing up. I haven't listened to it in a while, so I don't know how well it holds up, but I know that changed my life. Chris Rock, Bigger and Blacker is another one. And then I would say John Mulaney's New in Town, or the Great Depression with Gary Gulman. Those are all ones. I think you said 3, but I picked 4. So those are the 4 I would say that are my favorites throughout my life. Different eras. Eddie Murphy was when I was super young, under middle school, grade school. Chris Rock was high school. New in Town and Gary Gulman are now like my life. So
all good choices. Good stuff. So I wanted to talk to you about starting 10 years ago when you're still an attorney, and you wrote that your parents weren't too happy about the whole comedy thing. And what did your colleagues think about you doing the stand-up?
My parents are still in denial. A lot of lawyers. I didn't really have a lot of lawyer friends. I did music. I was a musician too. So I think everyone was kind of like curious as to see what would hold up, because I had different evolutions in my life where I was a musician and a band manager and booker. Then I became a lawyer. So people are like, all right, well, what's this new stage? So people were supportive. I think now colleagues, most lawyers want to get out. Like they dream of leaving law.
Yeah.
I actually liked being a lawyer. It wasn't like I was burned out a little bit, but a lot of it was just this comedy just took over my life. And so, but yeah, I mean, generally speaking, most people were like surprised because it's a little different, but also lawyers, musicians, everybody kind of lawyers definitely want to do comedy or music. Musicians want to be comedians want to be musicians. So those aspects of my life were kind of like envious and like rooting for me. You know, they were, this is cool. Like, I wish I could do what you're doing.
Yeah. It's definitely a special talent. And so thinking about the fact that you did that open mic and then you ended up getting to be a host for it. So did a fair amount of success come to you fairly early then?
I felt like it did, just because I was so comfortable being on a stage. So I was already, what one booker said to me when they passed me at the club was, they said, you already are very comfortable on stage and you're likable on stage, but you're not writing good, funny stuff. But we're still going to see you because we think you will get there.
Yeah.
So those things were easier. So I got a lot of opportunities that way. And I was a good host. So a lot of comedy clubs need hosts.
Right.
And I liked being a host. I preferred being a host to, just writing material, because as a host, you can weave in and out of a crowd and do whatever you could. So I think I got a lot of opportunities that way. My home club, Laugh Factory, made me they knew I wanted to host, so they made me the host of the Laugh Factory's open mic, which was a weekly gig. It was awesome. It was fun. And then I started hosting on the regular there. So I think I got a lot of opportunities because of the fact that my background as a musician, my background as a trial lawyer helped me be comfortable on stage.
Right.
Before other people, I think, would be. But then I think, like, once I got to a certain level, I felt like it took me a long time to become a headliner.
Yeah.
I'm just now getting more opportunities as a headliner.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed, that the thing that new comics work on the least is their delivery and their stage presence, because they don't know what that is yet. And being a professional, and really, if you've got any amount of life experience, then the stage is a little bit more familiar to you because you just been through stuff, and I guess that's young comedians. I would recommend that you look at what comedians do and pause it and look at it again and pause it and look at it again to understand what real stage presence is. And that's like 90% of it when you're starting.
Yeah, I think I was fortunate enough where I had that, maybe not the stage presence that I developed later, but I had a lot of the things that put me ahead of a lot of people that were, 2 years in, like I was early on. And then the writing kind of, you find your voice as you perform. So yeah, I think I would say I came out really strong, and I got a lot of opportunities early, but then I was stagnant for a long time too. Yeah. Like where the level from feature or, to get to the headline level, it took a while. And
and being a feature used to be a really comfortable position too.
Oh, it's the greatest position in the world. It's the easiest job. I mean, I'm a feature I get to feature for a lot of bigger names, so it's kind of fun. But then, you start realizing when you start headlining, like, oh yeah, it's not the same.
Right. Yeah.
The check drop still, like, every time I'm ready to handle it, I don't. I still screw it up.
Yeah, that's a trouble for a lot of people when they headline. Yeah, that's it's hard to work through that. Now it looks I've watched a lot of your tape, and well, I watched a lot of your video. I'm old, but I watched a lot of those, and it looks like crowd work is a pretty common thing with you. Is that part of your act like all the time?
So I don't like to put a lot of the jokes that I'm still doing on stage online. So I end up putting a lot of the crowd work, but I would say I typically work off a crowd energy, and sometimes to figure out where that is, I go into the crowd. I try not to do a lot of crowd work. Sometimes it's just kind of, I would say it's some shows it's a big part of the show, but other times, I remember the last few shows where I did in Florida, I didn't do any crowd work. And then I was like 45 minutes into my set. I was like, wow, I'm almost done. And I still needed to, do the last 10 minutes, and I had done almost everything in my set. And I never get to that level because I do so much crowd work. So,
so you said that you do a lot of writing on stage. Can you walk me through that?
So my process, what I do before COVID I would write an outline of a joke, a premise, and kind of like a couple tags. And here's an example of like how I write. I'll write an outline and then circle the bit, the name of the bit, and then just like have like a couple things that are going out of there. But then I work out the beats on stage. So if I have a joke about, masks, like I have a new joke that I'm doing about wearing a mask, sometimes I'll write it on Facebook and see how it does as a status or a tweet. And that doesn't really work for my style because I'm more of a storyteller anyway. But then I'll try it live on stage, and then I'll just work. The brain will just it'll be like free form thinking, and I'm recording all my sets to see where the laughs are. And 9 out of 10 of the times where I'm trying to get out of a joke, that pressure gets me to a funny bit, a closer or a funny beat, whatever it is. But that's how I write, and I try to do it on Zoom, but it's just a little harder.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually that's been my way of writing, and then I go back, listen to it, then I incorporate what I wrote on stage into actual writing it. Then I try it again, and then I try it again, and then I try it again, and then you cut out the fat, and you get a joke.
Right. So if you're doing 45 minutes, how much of that 45 would you say is working out new stuff?
Well, no, when I'm headlining, I try not to. Before COVID, I would maybe do like maybe 4 minutes of new stuff in a 45-minute set. But now, because you don't have that stage time as much, I would say there's more of that. There's maybe 5-10 minutes of new material. But what I would do before COVID was I'd write these ideas or the premises out. I'd go to Laugh Factory and Zanies here in Chicago, have these Tuesday shows where they're not paid spots. Sometimes they're paid spots, but you're just doing, 5-10 minutes, working out stuff, and then do another show, like an independent room on a Wednesday or Thursday, still work out those shows, work out the kinks. And then, that weekend, if I'm touring or if I'm doing a show somewhere, that's where I would get to the more polished level of the joke.
Do you wish? Yeah, it is.
It's different now because, and I just wrote about this on my LinkedIn. I used to go up 7 to 10 times a week, and I had a system down where, I could go to an open mic or even get some stage time on a show Monday through Wednesday. And Tuesdays were the best because you can hit 2 or 3 comedy clubs in Chicago, crowded rooms, work out newer jokes. So by the weekend, you might have another, if not a full new joke, like new beats from an old joke.
Right.
That worked out. But now you don't have that. We don't have that luxury.
No.
So it's harder.
Yeah.
It's harder to write. For my style of writing, it's harder.
Right. I just think it's hard to write because you don't really have a lot to write about because there's not much life going on.
That's true too. But I also have had a lot of weird experiences that if I were to have stage time, if things were opened up, I think I could get more.
Here's 3 great reasons to get the new Samsung Galaxy S21 5G at T-Mobile. 1, it's free for both current and new customers when you trade in an eligible device. 2, T-Mobile's the leader in 5G coverage. So 3, you can unleash 5G speeds in more places with your new phone. Get the new Galaxy S21 free at T-Mobile, the leader in 5G coverage.
Phone via 24 monthly bill credits plus tax. If you cancel credit, stop and balance on required finance agreement may be due. Contact us. Qualifying credit and consumer plan required. See details at T-Mobile.com.
Stuff out there, but I'm still writing them all. The premises out. I try to write every day, but it hasn't been happening lately.
Yeah.
I mean, not writing jokes, but I'm writing other stuff too. So.
Right. Yeah, no doubt. Do you wish this? Because this is something I've always wished. I wish there was like a different level of open mic. Like, so when you first start out, 4 minutes is a very long time. Filling that with actual humor. I mean, people can stammer for 4 minutes, but filling it with actual humor is a long time. So 4 or 5 minutes is a normal open mic. And then getting to that 10-minute mark is something that you can only really get to if you like maybe get a guest spot or you're on a showcase with a lot of comics or something like that. So I almost wish that there was like a 5, a 10, and a 15-minute open mic available, but I know it's not something that you could actually pull off, but it's hard to put together 20 minutes when you're only doing 5 at a time. It's hard to get the transitions and the tags right.
Yeah, I mean the shows that I was talking about, they weren't open mics, but they were like, there was an unspoken rule that if you're, depending on where you're on the room, like there'd be 10, like Tuesdays, for example, at Zanies in Rosemont, they have, it's called the Tuesday 10 or 10 Tuesday. The first half of the show was all comedians who are auditioning for Zanies, and the last 4 or 5 of us are established comics that we're working out our stuff. And we're all supposed to do 6 minutes, but sometimes if we wanted longer stuff, they would give it to you. They'd give you 2 minutes to work out stuff. So that was something similar to what you're talking about, where you get the longer sets.
Right.
I have found that certain times where you're doing the guest spots, I treat those as like a 10 minutes of, okay, I'm going to do like 5 minutes of old stuff, 5 minutes of new stuff.
Yeah.
So that's that. And then with the Zoom shows now too, if you're doing like a corporate gig, obviously you're doing your best material, you're getting paid a lot of money. But if you're doing a show where it's like a showcase style Zoom show, everyone is in the same position. This is the only stage time we have. So we're working out stuff, and people seem to understand it and be more forgiving.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it's almost like they feel like they're on the inside of something, almost like they're part of the team.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that would be a good feeling for sure. I like that, and I've had a few people, send me messages, saying, it was really cool watching you work that out and stuff. So that's pretty cool. It's not cool enough that I want it to keep going, but it's still cool.
When the first time I went back on stage for a real show in June after 3 months of not having shows, you catch yourself on stage where you're not, some of the stuff, there's a joke where you're like, oh, I was at a wedding this summer. And then you're like, well, you guys know that's not true.
Yeah.
They're already behind. And it's also like, it's kind of like a hack move that you didn't mean to do, but you catch yourself being like, well, that's not true.
Yeah.
And then they're laughing too, because they're like behind the wall, right? Because now they know, oh, this guy's been lying to us for the last 5 years with this joke about something that happened at a wedding last week.
Yeah.
When we know it's not true.
Yeah.
You just catch yourself. And then as you start doing more shows, when that part's coming up where you're like, I was at a wedding last summer,
Yeah.
There were no weddings last week.
Yeah.
So
I actually caught myself. My opener is about looking like Harrison Ford, but cashier told me I look like an older Harrison Ford. So that's my opener, because I get to talk about myself and how I'm younger than I look. And I did it, and I'm like, well, a cashier would never say that because I've got a mask on. I mean, all I can see is my eyes. So I said it, and nobody called me on it. So, but I thought, yeah, it really doesn't fit here. And so I'm going to have to say last year I went into a gas station.
There's a bunch of that stuff too. Yeah. And then even all the mask stuff or COVID stuff too. It'll be interesting how that changes things too. Cause I had a joke about the COVID that was about the first half of COVID, because now we're on like the third half or whatever the hell it is. Some of the stuff that we all dealt with the first half of COVID, it's already non-existent.
Right.
So,
yeah, no doubt.
There's different changes for the better or for worse. You gotta keep writing, and that's what makes you a better comic.
Yeah. I wanted to talk to you because you're so ingrained in the Chicago scene. I mean, when I talk to people on the coast, New York, LA, a lot of them are moving to Chicago. First off, they were, at least they were last year.
We were open,
yeah, because it's Chicago's one of the most talked about scenes as far as comedy is concerned anywhere. So I'm sure it's very competitive, and there's a lot of people trying to get stage time, and you're already established because you've been doing it long enough. You've already got your contacts and stuff like that. Let's pretend that I am a pretty good feature. I'm a good enough feature, and I can give you a strong half hour, and I'm 25 years old, and I'm just moving to Chicago. What advice would you give somebody that is coming into such a densely populated comedy scene and trying to succeed, trying to get some of that stage time?
Well, yeah, I mean, it was definitely a lot of people were moving here for a while when we were opened up. I would just say, just get up as much as you can. And people, if you're good, if you're doing something that's unique or that the clubs are going to need, you're going to get booked. But even if you don't get booked at the traditional comedy clubs, there's shows here every night. Hopefully they all come back, or most of them come back. Some of them may not, but if you work hard and you're nice to people, I think you're gonna do well. You just got to work hard, and they say networking or hanging out at the clubs helps. I never. I'm not a big drinker anymore, so I don't really like to go out and get drunk on a weekday with those people, although that helps. I think that's all you can do is just do your shows and do your sets, and people will book you on shows. Even from being in Florida, I was in Florida for a couple of weeks, and I did as many shows as I could, and I got opportunities just by performing and doing. I think people will know if you're in your hypothetical, you're a 25-year-old kid who's, you're writing consistently and you're a good feature. People are going to need that. There's going to be a role for you here. I mean, it is getting crowded. There are a lot of people that are looking for the same spot. So it is frustrating. I have noticed that even the amount of shows that I'm getting booked on, or I used to get booked on, is a lot harder for me. So it's kind of funny because it used to be when I'm in town, it'd be really easy to get a show, but now I have to plan ahead. I'd be like, hey, I'm going to be in town for, 2 weeks. Can I please, it used to be like, it would be easier for me to get on a show, but now it's not as easy. Yeah, I mean, that's all I can say is I think there's a lot of opportunities here. And if you don't get shows, make your own show, make your own opportunities. Yeah. That's what I did. That's what we were making our own shows based on our success with the open mic, and then people started to notice us and as producers, and we were able to generate crowds. I mean, it's all about crowds. If you can bring a crowd, if you have a draw, people are going to book it too.
I feel like that the business, especially if you own a club, if you own a club that's dedicated to comedy, it's gone completely to your merit as a comedian rather than who you know and all the elbow rubbing and stuff like that. They need butts and seats, so they need somebody funny up there.
Well, there's two parts to that. There's obviously like the comedians who are just funny, but they just don't have a social media presence.
Mm-hmm.
Those are, it's hard for those kind of comics because they're probably some of my funniest friends are headliners, and they don't sell out rooms in, certain cities, but everyone knows who they are. Everyone knows they crush, but there's also the internet sensations who, have maybe 20 minutes of jokes, but they're selling out, Wednesday night at Zanies or whatever. But they, Roy Wood Jr. he talked about it on, I think, Joe Rogan's podcast, where comedians were crapping on these guys, but they're the ones that are keeping the clubs open right now. Those internet sensations, and the clubs are doing a good job of booking them. And to be fair, like that's how I got booked on a lot of shows too. I wasn't an internet sensation, but there's certain markets where I had a draw, and clubs would let me headline on a weeknight, and then from there I'd feature on the weekend or end up working eventually as a headliner at that club. So there's that aspect of it too. But yeah, I mean, it's all about getting butts in the seats, and then there's people that can do it, without being funny.
Yeah.
But who knows?
Yeah.
It's just the market. It's a market that's comedy is just one of those weird things that it'll be interesting to see how we react to COVID.
Yeah.
Because it's the only field where we need live audiences bunched together. I was a musician. Yes, concerts, you need to have a crowd, but you don't need to have a crowd to do your art.
Right.
Musicians can play online. They can play, in a studio. Of course, concerts the energy is there, but comedians can't do that. I mean, they can, but it's definitely different watching, a live streaming Laugh Factory show on Instagram, where they don't have anyone in the crowd. You don't hear any laughs.
Yeah. Even
though the guy is hilarious on stage, or the comedian on stage is just crushing. No one's laughing at her or him. It's just kind of one of those things.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting.
Yeah. It's definitely a new game because the YouTubers and the TikTokers and all that kind of stuff, they're doing their thing. So I think it's going to be a part of it going forward, and it's going to morph into other stuff too. But, like you said, if they're keeping the art going, then let them do it.
Yeah. I mean, those guys, those people those internet guys or girls who are doing those shows, if they're helping the club stay open, let them do it. Those kind of shows, I think Roy Wood Jr. said it best, was like gives the opportunities for those clubs to book and develop headliners who maybe don't have that social media draw, but they are hilarious.
Right.
And you go to a show or you book them on a weekend, everyone that leaves that club is going to come back to Laugh Factory or Zanies or Wiley's, whatever club it is, because that guy was hilarious.
Right.
Or a girl.
So almost everybody that's a comedian has a podcast now, but you've been doing the podcasting for a while. What got you started in the podcast biz?
So Singles Only was my first podcast. I did that initially to promote a show I had at the Laugh Factory called Singles Only, which is Drink Day Laugh, a show about dating. And Jamie Masada, the owner of the Laugh Factory, was pushing me to have a podcast. I was against it, or not against it, but not excited about it at all. And now it's there's no more Singles Only show. It's a different show, but the podcast is still, we just recorded 200 I don't know, 240 episodes, something like that. So 230 some episodes.
Yeah, I think the last one I saw was like 238. Yeah.
Yeah. So we just recorded the ones that are coming out, and it's just like, it's insane. It took off, and I've learned a lot from it, and I've enjoyed it. It's developed my ability to interview people, which I love doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that one it just kind of took off, and it's opened a lot of doors for me and other opportunities. And then Make Us a Mixtape we started just over a year ago. Marty DeRosa and I. Marty DeRosa has been in the podcast game. He did Wrestling with Depression, which was super popular. And now we have Marty and Sarah Loves Wrestling. And he's like the god. If there's a Chicago podcast, Mount Rushmore, he's definitely on there.
Yeah.
So, we started our Make Us a Mixtape podcast just because we both love to talk about music and come from different backgrounds.
Mm.
That one's just kind of been for fun, and that's it's kind of taken its own. It's kind of fun not caring about, like, Singles Podcast is work now for me because obviously I have sponsors.
Yeah.
I have to keep it going, and Make Us a Mixtape is just kind of fun, and we try to keep it. Our weekly check-in, talk about whatever we're on our mind about music, having our friends on and make mixtapes. Everyone, makes mixtapes, whether it's cassettes, CDs, or kids making playlists now.
Yeah.
So,
I actually make playlists for my friends all the time. And
yeah.
I ask them what kind of music, because I like a lot of music. So I always try to find the bands that they've never heard of and put them on. And so I love doing it. Yeah.
Well, when we open up, we'll have you as a guest. We're gonna hopefully have guests again soon. So
cool.
That's all you got to do.
Yeah, great. Well, I can do that.
any topic, just be ready to talk about them.
Yeah, excellent.
Independent.
So you came up with a cool thing. I mean, being an attorney, you came up with a cool thing to do on stage that was called Everyone's a Lawyer.
Yeah.
And there's a couple of those on YouTube, and I watched those. Where did that idea come from? Because that's pretty cool.
Yeah, another one of those things where I was told I created the show Singles Only in Drink Day Laugh, which then became Drink Day Laugh, a show about dating, an interactive show where I hosted. And we were pitching that to network, and the producers came back to me and said, they liked me as a host, but they didn't think the show could work. And they said, create another show about something you know. And I know the law. So what I did was I love game shows. I love competition. Even when I did my open mic, I made it a competition. So I came up with the idea of comedians who a lot of comedians would come up to me and ask me stuff when I was practicing full time. And even this today, they'll say stuff, and it was just funny to see these comedians who I, had so funny and so smart, not really know what lawyers do. Or people would talk about the law on Facebook, and you're just like, you don't know what you're talking about. And then I was like, it came to me like to have a show where I had comedians interpreting things that are happening with the law. And sometimes politics. And it's just funny because it shows the different styles of comedians and how they approach, things like the law, things about crazy rules that have happened or crazy cases, or defending people that are impossible to defend. Who better to explain to us, why, Donald Trump's Muslim ban should be legal than a Muslim comedian.
Right.
Those are the kind of situations that we like to talk about, things that are uncomfortable about the law or situation. And it's been so fun. The hardest part about that show for me as a host is sometimes I'm watching and forgetting that I have to run a show because the contestants are so funny.
Yeah. I saw that and I thought that was a great idea. And, another way to do comedy and yet have it be different enough that it brings people in.
Yeah, we're pitching that right now to network. I was on the process of that before COVID, where we had some meetings, we had to wait and see how it's going to go without a live audience. But
Yeah, that's a cool thing. I like to ask this question of just about everybody, and I don't ask you to name names or anything like that, but what's the best and worst piece of advice you got coming up?
oh man, best advice I got was actually I'll say Tom Dreesen gave me a lot of great advice on hosting, how to be a good host. There were like 3 rules he gave me that I still share with people. That was probably one of the best. A lot of bookers gave me great advice about running a show and hosting a show, which would be Tom and the other people that told me. It was just like, do some crowd work, see where everyone's at, find out where the birthdays, where people are from, and then move on. Always end on a joke. Don't end on crowd work. Those are like kind of the best advices I got on how to be a good host. Keep the show going, obviously, if things are going well. If a comedian does well, keep the show going. If a comedian ends rough, bring the crowd back. If the guy is does too well, bring the crowd back down to normal for the next comedian.
Yeah.
They're all like good advice things that I still pass on to people unsolicited sometimes. I love watching hosts because that's an art form, I think, that doesn't get enough credit. It's a fantastic job. Bad advice, shoot, I can't really think of any bad advice that stuck with me. Yeah, I don't remember any bad advice. I think if I had bad advice, I don't remember it.
You came up on something that I talked to a lot of comics about, and I talked to people who are have worked a lot in the headliner area and the feature area. And when you're headlining, do you expect your feature to give it everything they've got and try to be better than you, or do you want them to stay in their lane?
Yes. Before I answer that, I did think of bad advice I got from people was to not worry about social media.
Oh, okay.
which is crazy. But it's to answer your other question. Yeah, I always, when I can bring my own feature, I always bring a comedian who I think will make it impossible for to keep up. So the comedians that I've had open for me now at comedy clubs, 2 of them have already been on Just for Laughs. One of them just won some huge contest. And those were people that I brought as features to clubs. And then they were always very thankful to me. And I always said, when you're huge, don't forget me. I want to come and open for you.
Yeah.
That's how I feature. Yeah, I always want them to crush. I always want to pick someone that, or have someone that does a great job.
Right. That's funny. A lot of the more old school, and I don't want to say old school as old as Dreesen, but I'm talking like late 80s, early 90s, they expected the feature to stay in their lane. You can only bring them to here. And
I've heard that a lot. Yeah. I've heard from a few comedians that did really well opening for bigger names. A lot of my friends, and then all of a sudden they weren't the opener anymore.
Yeah.
I think it happens more than you would expect.
Right. Yeah, and that it's funny. Some of the ones that I talk to and say they want the feature to really bring it and really push the boundaries and make it tough for them. Those are the ones that they've got a more unique act, and they don't really care who goes on before them because they're doing their thing anyway. So it's funny how that works, but I just it would be difficult for me if I was featuring, if somebody told me to stay in my lane and not give it my all.
I've had the pleasure of being on tour with a lot of bigger names, and I always thought that they were picking me because I was an easy follow. So I used to say that all the time. I'm like, oh yeah, everyone's like, they're like, "Oh, I heard you're opening for Demetri Martin." I'm like, "Yeah, it's because I'm an easy follow." But
Yeah.
that's not. I mean, I feel like certain comedians ask me to open because I think I have a different style than them.
Uh-huh.
But they don't like I like to think that it's because I'm good, but we don't.
Yeah.
No.
It's because you're good. Come on. The last thing I like to talk about is, and I always put this in threes for some reason. What 3 things do you know now that you wish you would have known when you started?
3 things that I wish I knew back then. I wish I started when I was younger. I wish I started younger, and I also wish that I was recording all my sets from beginning. That's the biggest advice, I think, and listening to my stuff. That's the hardest part. So recording stuff, starting earlier, and getting up more. I was getting up more back then because when I first started, I was only getting up once or twice a week, even though there was an opportunity to go up all the time. So that's the one thing. And then I would also say to enjoy the moment, enjoy it more, and appreciate the process. I think people say that all the time, but you don't realize it until you're going in. The one thing about comedy, there's no skipping in line. Like, everyone has to pay their dues. Some people move faster. But yeah, I mean, those are the things that I think I wish I did, and, be more patient, I guess.
Yeah. It's funny about recording because no matter how in the moment you are up when you're on stage, you miss things that are laughs, and sometimes it's 2 sides of the coin. First of all, you think a joke you did completely bombed when it did okay. You just need to do it better. And then you also think something totally killed, and it was really only those people up front that were laughing.
2 people laughing really loud. Through the whole room. Yeah, no, I agree with you. Yeah, I think that the way I write, especially, like, I never realized for the first few years, like, the only reason certain things I remembered it is because someone had recorded the show. And I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Ever. So that's such a crucial part of the process for me, or for anyone that writes on stage, or you have that ability to see immediate feedback of what something is. And, if it, or positive or negative, if it works 3 times, it's a bit. If it bombs 3 times, it's not going to work.
Yeah. So I got to say that I know you're doing Zoom comedy because you are looking in the camera, and that's something I'm still having trouble with.
Yeah, it took a while to figure that out, but I'll start do the Zoom podcast now too. So
yeah. I put you over here, so you're close to where the camera is, but I'm still looking at you instead of the camera, like you're sitting across from me. But I'm working on it, but it's tough. It's like, I mean, when you're doing it live, you're trying to pan the audience and stuff like that, and you just can't do that. You got to look right in that stupid camera, that little tiny hole. Yeah.
Story of our lives.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. Where can people find you if they want to find all your stuff?
My Instagram is Paul Farahvar. My name, Farahvar. Or on YouTube, it's just youtube.com/Paul F Comedy. Those are pretty much the best places to find me. Or my website, Paul F Comedy, as well. So.
Yeah, that I found. I think I found all your stuff from there. So that's a good hub.
Yeah, my website has all my links to everything. PaulFComedy.com.
Yeah.
And then if you try to spell my name wrong, most of the time Google will be like, "Did you mean this?" So
yeah.
That's the luck of doing social media for a while.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, this has been great. I learned a lot, and I'm glad we got to connect. And I have to tell the audience that I ghosted you for a while, but that's just because those Facebook messages just get stacked up, and you can't you forget to go back. And I went back one day and I'm like, oh yeah, I totally stood you up.
That's okay. No, I think you reached out to me and I was like, sure, what are the details? And then I got busy too, so it all worked out.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Scott.
Here's 3 great reasons to get the new Samsung Galaxy S21 5G at T-Mobile. 1, it's free for both current and new customers when you trade in an eligible device. 2, T-Mobile's the leader in 5G coverage. So 3, you can unleash 5G speeds in more places with your new phone. Get the new Galaxy S21 free at T-Mobile, the leader in 5G coverage.
Phone via 24 monthly bill credits plus tax. If you cancel, credit stop and balance on required finance agreement may be due. Contact us. Qualifying credit and consumer plan required. See details at T-Mobile.com.
Here's 3 great reasons to get the new Samsung Galaxy S21 5G at T-Mobile. 1, it's free for both current and new customers when you trade in an eligible device. 2, T-Mobile's the leader in 5G coverage. So 3, you can unleash 5G speeds in more places with your new phone. Get the new Galaxy S21 free at T-Mobile, the leader in 5G coverage.
Phone via 24 monthly bill credits plus tax. If you cancel, credit stop and balance on required finance agreement may be due. Contact us. Qualifying credit and consumer plan required. See details at T-Mobile.com.